Okay, the very first thing we're going to do is some shading. The first thing you want to do is go up here to the new layer and create a new layer, and then you want to set that new layer to multiply. It's all the way up here at the top of the list. And you're going to want something that's like a nice solid ink or paint or oil brush, something that feels like a nice solid flat color, because we're just going to be filling this in completely black, right? And you might be thinking, well, that's just too dark. I don't want it to be black. Well, check it out. There's some magic that's going to be happening here shortly. So you start to fill that in almost entirely in black. And then if you go over here to that multiply layer we created, we drop that opacity down. Because it's on a multiply layer, it's only going to be about however transparency we set it. So if we set it at like 50% transparency, we got ourselves a really nice gray here. But what's beautiful about that is that if we wanted to, we can make this shadow even lighter. What we're doing is just filling in a shadow pass. And what we want to do is kind of imagine that the light is coming from the far right side and it's casting a shadow across to the left side. And it doesn't have to be an extreme lighting situation. It can just be that it's got like a soft light going that direction, but this is going to help you to turn your forms. And if you start to apply more of this kind of flat shaded kind of lighting to your line art, you're going to create more of a sense of depth. And you're going to want to go through the whole drawing and make sure that everything that's on that left side, basically everything that was going back to that vanishing point number one, is really going to have a little bit of shadow there. I also want that shadow to be coming, like the light is coming down from above. So that underside lip of edges that are protruding and popping out are going to get a little bit of that gray as well. And just don't paint in with gray though. Remember, you're on that black layer with the opacity set down to like 40 or 50%. That way it keeps it consistent. You know, you're not color dabbing or anything like that. All of your shadows are going to be completely flat and consistent. That way, once we have all of our flats in place, we can adjust that slider and decide how dark do we want that to be. If you want it to feel like it's on the ground, you may also want to cast a little bit of a shadow on that shadow side, consistent with the lighting from that top right that we had been painting in before. Keep in mind, your lighting should be consistent. You can't have shadows going in different directions, otherwise people will think your drawings look like the moon landing. That's just a little joke for the X-Files fans out there. I like to do a little bit of what's called ambient occlusion, which is basically just where corners connect. There's just a little bit more shadow. So you'll see like along the bottom where the chest touches the ground, there's a little bit of that. And also little lines in the dirt where it just kind of looks like there's a little bit of a different texture to the ground. And that gives it a different feel from the surface of the chest. So if we double check our perspective here, you can see that everything's still fitting into that perspective. Nothing we've done is added anything outside of that, although it's a great guide and everything that we're adding to it still fits into the same construction lines that we had set up when we were doing our very first sketches of our construction of our box in perspective. And if we were to just isolate our shadow layer, you'd notice that the line art can be switched off. I've merged down my layers into just a shadow layer, just a line art layer, and just the guides layer that we had created. Now you don't have to do that. Just make sure that your line art layer is on the very top and it's set to multiply. And then make sure that if you have the shadow layer underneath that, that's also set to multiply. And then what we want to do is create a new layer and put that underneath all of these. We're going to do our color flats. And our color flats layer needs to be a normal layer. Again, I can't tell you how important it is that this color flats layer is underneath your line art and your shadow layer. Okay, and what we're going to do is just fill in everything in flat color. And you'll notice that this is where the magic of that multiply layer is coming into play, because we're just using one color. I'm not using like a darker color for the shadows. The multiply layer with all that gray in it is doing that. Okay, so I'm just painting with two colors here. I got the brown for the wood, and I got the sort of gray, or it's a little bit of a teal, actually. A little bit of blue in that gray for the metal, the metallic looking parts of the treasure chest that I want. And if you wanted to do gold, you could do gold. It's up to you. Again, this is entirely however the heck you want to do it. Maybe you want to follow mine exactly for the first one, and then you want to maybe design your own treasure chest after this, you know, in whatever kind of styling you want to do. But in this case, I'm going with kind of like cold steel or cold metal and brown for the wood. At least these are my two material compositions I'm planning. But if you want to change a color after you've laid it down, go up here to Edit, Tonal Correction, and Hue Saturation. Okay, that gives you these sliders and you can adjust the temperature of any color. This would also be beneficial if you wanted each color on a different layer. Then, like, let's say you wanted to change the color of all of your wood, you could easily just modify that using that hue saturation slider. And remember, you have infinite layers here, so I created a new layer, and then I'm just using like an airbrush. These are just one of the brushes. You have different types of airbrushes. It has like a soft edge to it, and I'm getting real sloppy with it, and I'm just kind of darkening in the corners. This is a little bit more of that ambient occlusion that I was talking about earlier when we were doing kind of harder cut shadows. This is going to give you a little bit softer transitions, softer shadows, and then you can just erase out the stuff because again, it's on another layer. So if you wanted to erase out to get a cleaner edge on the side of your treasure chest, you just use that eraser and cut it out because it's on another layer. You're not going to affect all your color flats beneath that. Yeah, buddy, now we can get into actual painting. And what I like to do is get a little bit of that World of Warcraft style. I did a lot of artwork for World of Warcraft back in the day, and I changed the way that I paint forever because I never used to do this, but for some of these corner pieces, instead of drawing in a black line, I will paint in a little bit of a highlighted line. This is especially true on materials that are more metallic or have a little bit of a reflective property to them. Just make sure that if you add any divots or any like protruding pieces of metal sticking out, that you are consistent with your lighting. And also, if you're doing this highlight in the shadows, that highlight doesn't go to pure white the way that it does in the highlighted areas. In fact, everything in the shadow side needs to be in the low value range. What do I mean by low value range? If we're to look at the color wheel down there, you'll see that this is in that darker range, and even the highlights, they don't get very bright, or the value range stays below the 50% mark. But if we're to look at the highlighted areas, we'll see that the lighter areas are in the higher range, and the highlight areas go almost to white. They go almost to white, and it's whatever the color in your environment is. So if we have like a blue sky back here, you're going to have a little bit of blue in this highlight because that's the color that's reflecting off of the metal, okay? So keep those things in mind as you're adding these little rims and edges and highlights to your rendering. Another thing that I want to suggest is that when you are selecting a highlight color, add a little bit of saturation to it, and don't just add white. A lot of times when people add a highlight to something, they just add white. Now in this case, I am using a very white light because I've got a lot of this white light bouncing off of it. But if you were to add just a little bit of, like, say, warm color to a little bit of orange to it, then you'd get a nicer highlight than that. And then also with wood, it's a very matte surface. And so I don't want that wood to look like it's reflective the way that the metal looks reflective. So I've gone and like actually darkened in some of the flat areas between the grooves, between those highlights. And if you want your metal to look beaten up and aged and worn, then you can dig holes in it and ding holes in it. But if you do that, remember to be consistent with that highlight. So you want to probably add in like a little bit of a reflective specular on, the side of it. I've gone in and just cleaned up some of my lines here for the final pass. And just like with all of the color flats, I've gone in and added in a sky, and I had some white on another layer, so I've gone in and I had to erase that. If you find that you've painted white on a layer that isn't set to multiply, you'll have to erase it out to clean it up. And if you go into Edit, Tonal Control, and Color Balance, you can mess around a little bit with the color temperature. You can do a hue saturation adjustment like we did when we were changing the color of the wood earlier. You can do that on your different layers and overall unify your colors a little bit more. And there you go. Those are the fundamental basics of constructing a treasure chest and rendering it and coloring it, and then adding a little bit of lighting to it and defining your materials. I would say that I spent about 45 minutes on this one, a lot of time editing the video, but only about 45 minutes doing the drawing. You can take about however long you want to do it, and hopefully this will help you with painting anything that you want to learn to draw. I want to thank Wacom for the opportunity to share this information with you, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do some more of these lessons in the future. If you're in a rush and you just want to learn more of the advanced stuff, go and check out some of my videos over on my YouTube channel. I post every week. I'll see you there.